Hello, hello. It is so wonderful to see all of you here in CitySpace and those of you gathered from the comfort of your own homes virtually. I'm Margaret Lowe. I'm the CEO of WBUR, and I want to tell you that this is our first members-only event in CitySpace. So thank you for being here. And you're in for a really special treat as we celebrate Bob Oakes, who, after 27 years behind the mic of Morning Edition, is officially putting his alarm clock in deep storage. I think there are several people in this room who are really grateful for that, too. I think it's fair to say that Bob is probably one of the most trusted and respected journalists in Boston and beyond. And it is a fact, it's a fact that he is a beloved colleague and a real touchstone for all of us. So last month when Bob officially handed over the mic to Rupa Shenoy, our new host of Morning Edition, it really was the end of an era. And Governor Deval Patrick, our former governor, actually said to me, he said, Margaret, he said, I actually don't know how I'm going to know when it's mornings if Bob Oakes isn't on the air to wake me up. And I think a lot of us actually feel that way. And there's something, I love that the former governor, and I think all of you, can't imagine a day without WBUR and a morning without Morning Edition. So I want to thank all of you because your enduring support makes what we do possible. You fuel our independent journalism on air, online, now in real life, finally, once again, as Bob Oakes is going to take a ride down memory lane and sort of talk about some of the biggest stories that he covered over the past 27 years, from big baseball games to big blizzards to some of the darker moments in our history, from 9/11 to the Boston Marathon bombing. And I also think that it's fair to say that Bob has been a lifeline for all of us during the pandemic. And he's here to talk about all of that with another WBUR legend, the peerless Robin Young. Robin, as I think you all know, is the co-host of Here and Now, which is WBUR's daily production, our midday news magazine with NPR. Bob and Robin go way, way back, so I know you're in for a magnificent conversation. We're going to leave lots of time for your questions, too. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to hand the mic over to you, Robin, and to you, Bob. And I'm going to go sit down and enjoy the show. Thank you all.
Thank you, Margaret. By the way, if you do have questions for Bob, we've already received many of them. You can go to slido.com on your phones and then use the hashtag Oakes and submit a question, and I'll be getting them.
That would be Oakes.
Oakes. Well, you know what? Let's just take 1 second there. WBUR News Oakes. What people, you say this is the question that people ask you the most.
Yeah, well, for decades, really, it sort of became a little parlor game on social media. Where is Bob Oakes from? And there have been guesses from all over, from the Rust Belt to around here. And the answer is that I grew up in Central Mass. That I'm a Worcester boy. But Oakes comes from my dad, who came to the U.S. right after World War II from Nova Scotia. And so, you get it now,
that's one, a two. And so say WBUR, your NPR news station. Just say it. Just say it.
To get me to do that, you have to pull the cord out of my back. Boston's NPR news station.
All right, I'm going to start with something that Mary Beth wanted me to say. Mary Beth's right here. I have awakened to Bob Oakes' voice more than any guy I ever dated.
Those were great mornings.
Yeah, how often do you hear that? How much a part of someone's morning you were?
Well,
Are you being careful?
no,
And your wife's right here.
Well. First of all, this is my sitting here directly across from me is my wife Martha.
Who I have to say has put up with these early mornings for so many years, and most recently was kicked out of the bedroom so that Bob could broadcast from the bedroom during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, that's right. I mean, she was up with me almost every morning anyway, because I'm not exactly necessarily a quiet person when I get up in the morning. So as I lumber around the house, so Martha had been getting up a lot of mornings anyway, but with COVID, she was up every morning, because it's a little hard to sleep in a room where your husband is delivering the news from 3 feet away.
Well, so I'm just wondering how you're doing now, because first of all, you look marvelous, and you've lost, kind of the facial tics that you'd acquired over the years
Right.
from the lack of sleep. And I'm just wondering if you're wandering, the landscape, asking people if you could please tell them the current events, of the day. How are you feeling about not having that sentinel position that you had?
No one understands when I walk up to them and say, "Can I have your press release, please?"
Yeah.
It's just on a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Honestly, while I miss it, I don't miss it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the immediate next chapter, and then the chapter after that.
Yeah.
And honestly, as I said several times when asked by my colleagues and by reporters from outside the radio station, why now, it was time. The city of Boston is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And I knew everyone knew we were getting a new mayor. And it was time, and it was a good time to go. It was a really good time to go.
And to stay, because you'll also be doing reporting, which
Right.
which will be so valuable
When we
to
ramp
us.
that up.
Yep,
Right.
yep,
Right.
yep.
Oh, can I say?
Yeah.
Can I say I am not usually this scruffy, but I'm growing my beard out right now, because every December for decades, WBUR has been raising money for Rosie's Place, which I'm sure most of you know what Rosie's Place is, probably the most premier homeless shelter in the country for women. I'm striving to see how much I can look like Dickens.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing
if you
how
Google
close
a
he gets.
picture, if you Google Dickens and look at an image, we'll see how close I come, and then I will shave the beard off.
Well, now, look at all the people going by in the trolley waving at Bob Oakes. Love that. I want to talk about some of the things that, we touched on maybe, and people maybe know a little bit about this, about your life in different ways, but, your past reporting. And I want to start with how you started, and a little bit of something about you that I think is so informative. You and I both actually had polio in 1955.
Right.
And it's a crapshoot, just like COVID is now, and it lingered with you.
Right.
And I often found myself thinking, did you ever question, well, I don't know if I could be a street reporter, which you became, gritty, get out on the street, track them down, chase after the politicians, a street reporter for WEI before coming to BUR. Did you ever think, yeah, I wonder if I can do that?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't. There was never really any doubt in my mind. In fact, I came to it in the seventh grade. I was a student at Providence Street Junior High School in Worcester, and which is no longer a junior high anymore. I came in, I think it was third place in a citywide writing contest. I wrote an essay about the battle between Old Ironsides, the USS Constitution, and HMS Guerriere. For whatever reason, the judges liked it, and I won a prize. They called it an assembly in the big school auditorium, I was awarded my little medal, which is about the size of my thumb. I still have it, and I actually still have the essay written out longhand on
Oh, that is great.
on that lined paper we used to get, when we were little kids in school, and as a seventh grader, we were way the heck up in the balcony. So it took forever for me to get from the balcony all the way down to the stage to get the medal, because up until after the seventh grade, the summer between the seventh grade and the eighth grade, I lost, finally, after all those years, the iron braces that I was wearing on both legs.
Some of us
So,
remember them.
and I went down, received the medal, and as I was walking back through the hallway, getting ready to go back upstairs to my seat, the teacher, who was the advisor to the student newspaper, just grabbed me and said, "You're writing for my newspaper."
Sounding a lot like Dickens and Scrooge.
Yeah. And that was it. From there, I wrote for them. I wrote for my high school newspaper. I became in the town of Charlton, the Central Mass town of Charlton, where my parents moved after they moved out of Worcester. I was the editor of the paper and the editor of the yearbook at the same time. Went to college, did an internship at 19 years old in a little local news department in Gardner, Mass, WGAW, with my friend Rich Merrill, who's also sitting here in the front row, my college friend from all those years ago, and just went on from there.
Are you the ice fishing friend too?
I can't stand fishing.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I've heard stories. Wow. So even then. So
Yep.
let's go forward to WEEI. I think we have a photo. And Bob and there we are. On the right, you see Bob. On the left, you see Sam Fleming. Sam, are you here?
Yeah, he's over
Sam,
here.
who was the boss of us for so many years. Where are you, Sam? And the two of you, who's the poor guy in the middle? There's Sam. Who's the poor guy in the middle?
Was he a member of the executive council, Sam?
Sam's over here, yeah. Oh, no, he's over here.
Yeah.
But there you are. Talk about EEI. Many of us, I think.
Don't we look excited there?
Yeah. Who are you looking at, too? That's what. Many of us remember that EEI was a powerhouse news station, wasn't it?
Well, this is actually from before EEI.
This is before EEI.
Yes,
Where's
this
this?
is from when Sam and I both worked at different radio stations in Concord, New Hampshire. I was there for 4 years from the late 1970s to the early 1980s. But let me also say, before you get to your question, that I first met Sam Fleming, who recruited me to come to WBUR, by the way, years later. I first met Sam Fleming in the first week of April 1978, when I walked into a little radio station in Keene, New Hampshire, and Sam was already there in the news department, and I had been hired. It was my first day. He was sitting there with his feet up on the desk, reading the Manchester Union Leader, and everyone know the Manchester Union Leader with its crazy late publisher William Loeb, who used to write those incendiary at front page editorials. So Sam, like the first words out of his mouth are, "Listen to this." And he starts reading me the editorial, and I'm completely aghast. I mean, I'm just shocked at the language and the content. And I looked at Sam and I said, "We should do a news story about that." And Sam, he's leaning back on the desk, and he looks at me and he says, "Bob, he does this every day." So, and then years later, Sam hired me to come to BUR.
A long friendship. Talk about that part of your life, hunting down the politicians, the trying to get questions answered at press conferences, and how did that form you?
Well, I think you become, well, first of all, I think you learn how to do it by listening to other people, just observing for a while, and a long while. Actually, I think you observe for your lifetime as a journalist how other people ask questions, especially at public events like that. And that's how I learned to ask questions. But then there's you have to, if you're going to be good at it, you have to develop a certain fearlessness, where you understand that you're going to ask a question that a public figure may not want to answer, and probably won't answer, but they may belittle you for asking the question. I think we certainly heard that come to a head during the Trump years, and hopefully, well, let's just call them the Trump years, and so it really is, it's a lifetime of observing. So this is one time years ago when Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House. And you probably remember that he was famous for collaborating with Ronald Reagan, and he took a lot of heat for that over the years from other Democrats. And so I find myself after a public event in Tip's hometown of Cambridge, walking alone with him down the hallway of a building that we're in where he did a public event. And I'm the only person walking with him. And it came after a compromise that a lot of Democrats hated on a tax bill. But he drove it, and when Tip drove something, he could push it home. And so I'm asking him questions about it. We're walking side by side, and I'm asking questions. And he's answering in the way that he wants to answer, not necessarily answering my question. So I was asking the question again and again and again, but in a different way each time. And finally, he got fed up with it. And he just swung his hands out like this. And I was so close to him, like it was like, this is enough. and I was so close to him that the microphone went flying about 60 feet. And by the time I retrieved the microphone, Tip O'Neill, who was not a small man, was way down the hall trying to get the heck away from this guy. So
he escaped. Well, we got a tunnel. So.
Yeah, we got the tunnel.
We got
That's
the tunnel. I want to talk about your move to WBUR. And one thing that's very notable about Bob is that we have producers that we work closely with, and in his case, some that were his Morning Edition producers for stories that he did. And the legacy, the jobs they went on to, and I'm going to bring a couple of them up tonight, but let's bring Monica Brady-Myeroff up. Many of you know Monica's reporting for WBUR. She was Bob's producer. And we need a microphone for you. Oops, microphone for her. And I'll set this up, Monica, then we'll hear from you. You both went to Kosovo in 1998 and 2000, and the war was 98, 97? Yeah.
War reporting.
Was 97, 98. Now I know you went to Albania. Set this up a little bit. Where had you gone, Monica?
Well, we were the first kind of outpost foreign desk of WBUR. Fearless, Bob was, to jump into this too. We were asked to go and cover the refugee crisis from Kosovo, all the Kosovar refugees in Albania. And Bob didn't hesitate, and I didn't hesitate. And then we were over in Albania together.
We really didn't know each other that well at that point.
We really
either.
didn't. I mean, I'd worked there about 8 years or so, but passing in the hallway, occasional Q&As at 5 a.m. And suddenly we are, in a war situation.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were in Kosovo, do you remember there was shooting outside our hotel room?
There was. Well, we would sit on the balcony almost every night and write our stories, or we would read them to each other before we would get them edited back in Boston and send them to the radio station. And there was gunfire every night off the balcony.
You talked about walking through a ballroom or a room in the hotel that there'd been a massacre.
In I can't remember the name of the town, but the day after a massacre, you and I went to, I think it was a restaurant, and there was shattered glass and shattered furniture everywhere, and blood all over the floor, and we reported on that.
It was intense. It was intense, but it was amazing because you took care of me. We worked together as a team, and I have so much respect for you. and came away from that with even more about the conditions we were under and reporting.
Right.
And you like drew on all your experience that you'd had as a reporter. But the way it translated in the newsroom too, going forward, and the way you set a leadership tone in everything that we covered, everything that we did, everything you hear on air would go through Bob. What did Bob say? Is Bob on board? What does Bob think about the story? And whether we were in Kosovo or not, it's like, Bob, your news judgment just permeated the newsroom in a very positive way for the 15 years I was there.
Oh, Monica.
That's very nice.
Monica, thank you.
So the day we left for, I think the first time for Albania and Kosovo, Adam, your now husband, were you married then? You'd just been married. So, and I didn't know you at all at that point. And we were all at the airport together, and you pulled me aside. Do you remember what you said to me? No. I remember. You said to me, "Take care of her."
Oh.
It was very sweet. It was very sweet. And I said, "Who the heck is that?"
Well, you did take care of her. By the way, Monica, just an incredible reporter for years, is working now on bringing public radio material into classrooms. It's a terrific project. So, yay, Monica. Yep. Also, let's bring up Shannon Dooling. Shannon Dooling, who was your producer, and you went to Vietnam together. Shannon, give us context for this.
Context for Vietnam. Okay. So Bob pitched this series of stories. I was his field producer at the time, pitched a series of stories about the upcoming 40th anniversary of the evacuation of Saigon.
Fall of
Right.
Saigon, yeah.
The fall of Saigon. And, he had the vision. It was 100% Bob's vision. And we pre-reported and pre-produced a few stories, but we pitched this idea to the newsroom and they went for it. And so, oh my gosh, we're going to Vietnam. And I'm tagging along with Bob. So yeah, I'm recording his interviews and I'm helping him to, write and pre-produce and pre-interview folks. And, but I have to say, Bob and Martha, his wife, were super smart about this travel experience because they went a week ahead of when Bob and I were scheduled to start reporting so that they could acclimate to the time change and have a little bit of a vacation. I think I showed up like the day before our first deadline. And so I'm like, what time is it? Where am I? and Bob and I we just, stepped right into reporting.
We have some sound. You also followed some veterans returning from this area.
We did. So that was Bob's entire pitch. His story. He had come to know a group of veterans, Massachusetts-based veterans, who happened to be some of the last Marines evacuated off the top of the embassy in Saigon at the time. And he cultivated those relationships and in only a way that Bob Oakes can do. And I guess maybe we should just listen to some of the sound from Vietnam.
You're talking to two of those veterans, I think, on the roof of what used to be their barracks. And so let's listen.
This is 90.9 WBUR. I'm Bob Oakes in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. It was 40 years ago this week that the Vietnam War ended here in what Americans call the fall of Saigon. Two of the last Marines to leave here, both from Massachusetts, have come back. For a ceremony honoring the last Marines to die here, we met up with the Massachusetts Marines, Bill Newell of Hopkinton and John Gillane of Malden, only hours after they arrived. It's their first trip back to Vietnam in 40 years. Our conversation took place on the rooftop of their hotel, the Saigon Star. In 1975, it was their barracks, appropriately named Marine House. First time back in 40 years? What's your impression?
It's so much more modern and people are freely moving about. There's no repression or anything like that. I mean,
we walked around this morning. You see no police presence. The two or three that I did happen to see, You don't see them carrying weapons. They're just walking along here. The traffic puts Boston traffic to shame. It makes
And it's insanity?
It's insanity. It's just. I actually got in a cab this morning, and I've never had a white knuckle ride until I came here.
I know it's early in your visit, but I'm wondering if you've had a chance to speak with folks who live here, and how welcome do you feel, given that you're Americans coming back and you were both soldiers 40 years ago?
Well, I spoke to a porter this morning. He said that his father spent 8.5 years in a re-education camp in Dalat, which would be a little south of here. He was a South Vietnamese Marine. There was no tone of resentment or anything like that. I mean, I really get the impression that the war is really over for them. The big takeaway, I guess, at this point would be we're still trying to move on, and
They already have.
They've already moved.
They have.
Yeah, they're moving on. Yeah.
I love that moment. You know, Shannon, I'm going to talk to Bob more about that in other shows, but Shannon Dooling, by the way, who, you know, pulled a thread in Chelsea and noticed this immigration issue there, and it took her all the way to South America. Just phenomenal reporting. But here you were, yes, but here you are, you know, kind of tagging after Bob Oakes, you know, before that.
That's where it all started.
Yeah, I was going to say, what'd you learn from that?
That's where it all started. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be a reporter if it weren't for Bob, and I'm going to get teary-eyed. But this is my MO, if anyone knows me. I honestly, I had like a funny anecdote to share about Bob, but I'm going to skip that.
No. Tell us, we see.
Okay. Funny first. So we're in Vietnam, and you know, it's just this crazy schedule that we're keeping. We're filing for Here and Now. We're filing for Morning Edition. We're filing on like Boston Standard to Eastern Standard Time, but we're in Ho Chi Minh City, so we're 12 hours ahead. So we're living in two places. Yes. And I just remember this distinct moment where we're both deliriously tired, and we're about to, like, I don't know, probably go through an edit for a script, or Bob's going to track something and I'm going to have some suggestions for him or whatnot. And I march down to his hotel room and I'm knocking on the door and I'm like, all right, let's just finish this so we can like go to bed. And Bob answers the door and he's in like red flannel PJ pants, a white t-shirt, and suspenders. In like true Bob Oakes fashion, that is like the only man, he's got suspenders on tonight. He is the only man who can pull that off. That image was seared into my memory, and now you all have it. I just want to share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
That I just, and we hammered that script out and we filed on time, and
a journalist was born, is what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was an award-winning series for us. I mean, I remember Dan Mosey, who at the time was, I think, perhaps he wasn't in the role he's in now, but I remember him congratulating us and saying, "This is award-winning journalism you guys just filed," and it ended up, you know, being so. And but fast forward, you know, a year or so after that, and you know, Bob's literally pushing me to reporting. Like, I'm kind of on the cliff, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And making the jump from production, from being a producer to a reporter, it's a big leap in the industry, and it can be one that's hard to make. And if I wasn't ready, Bob pushed me off the cliff, and he's like, "You're ready. You're ready for the scrum."
Where you should have been all the time.
Yes, exactly. And we are the beneficiaries. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks.
So,
Yes, please.
couple things. So, I may have been wearing the red flannel PJs. You were wearing the fuzzy slippers. and I remember working in your hotel room one night, and you're tramping around in these slippers, and I'm saying, "What the hell did she pack those for?"
Yeah.
Right.
There have been others you've pushed out of the nest. We're going to get to that, but I want to fast forward to a day in 2011, and we're doing our thing on Here and Now. It's about 8 something in the morning and 9 in the morning maybe, and suddenly you come running down the hall, and there were at that time, there were 2 television sets in the station. As someone who came from television, I found that appalling. But one of them was in your little your news pool there, and you came running down. You said, "I think a small commuter plane just flew into the World Trade Towers."
Right,
And you went running back, and we all followed you.
right.
And there it was. It unfolded before us, and we eventually found the planes that had come from Boston. We ended up doing a lot of the coverage because WNYC's signal had been knocked out. It was on the World Trade Tower. And so Bob Edwards, who was then in Washington, didn't have access to NYC reporters. And I know you did a lot of that reporting. Just your thoughts on, when something happens like that, and we're getting to when it happened again. But, do you freeze? Just what happens? I know what happens in my blood veins, but in my veins, what happens?
For me, it's a matter of focus. I found through a bunch of different tragic events like that I can focus my mind pretty well, and I can put on the blinders so that I'm not distracted by anything other than what it is that I'm supposed to be reporting on or doing at that moment or seeing at that moment or saying at that moment. It happened for 9/11. It happened for the Challenger disaster when I was in Florida reporting for the WBEI, the CBS O&O here in Boston. And I got sent to Florida by myself because since I'd lived in New Hampshire for a while, I knew the McAuliffe family, and I knew people who were traveling with them. I did not know Krista McAuliffe, but I knew a bunch of the people from New Hampshire who were in Florida, so they sent me. And it was days and days and days of delays for that flight, and it was, felt like we were just constantly repeating the same thing for days and days as the cold weather kept the rocket from going up. And then finally it happened. It went off, and we all know what happened after that. And that turned out to be, that morning turned out to be the longest monologue that I've ever done on radio in all these years. I was on the radio straight for 45 to 60 minutes, no help, just no questions from the anchor back in Boston. It was just me talking for 45, 60 minutes straight. And basically, I put the blinders on, and I recounted everything that took place all week long leading up to that moment, and then went back over that moment. And a friend of mine who was in Boston television at the time told me when I came home a week and a half later that it was the most riveting piece of radio that he had ever heard. After my monologue was done, and the reason it was a monologue was because the radio station was completely unprepared, had no reporters fielded anywhere else, so it took them a while to deploy. And once they deployed and the Boston anchor came back on, and I was relieved for a brief period of time, Rosemary Lappin, who was the managing editor of WBEI at that time, said, came on and speaking into my ear and said, Bob, that was unbelievably good. And I remember saying down the line, Rosemary, I can't talk about that now. I can't talk about that. Don't want to talk about that. Need to stay focused. Because I knew if I was diverted, I'd just start crying.
Yeah.
And that night, sitting in a restaurant at the Cape with late at night with a number of colleagues friends, journalism colleagues from New Hampshire. We were sitting at the table, and suddenly the four of us just started crying. Yeah. You just it's focus and repress your emotions to stay on the job, on target. So.
Well, And let's go to that horrible week, the Boston bombing.
Right.
We all know what happened, and that day was just horrible. And then we all know that that fear that gripped everyone because we didn't know they were two bombers, but the bombers were on the loose. And then we come to Thursday, and the Lord and Taylor video is released, and we see these images. And Thursday night, those images are released. And then the wild night, Thursday night, where the Tsarnaev brothers are, kidnap, hijack a car, the race down Memorial Drive, the shootout with police, and the siege in Watertown. And I know, I think Martha Biebinger actually came in first because she lives nearby and started some of the coverage. You came in so early that morning and picked it up. Just set that scene. We have a little bit of sound. Jonathan Peck, one of our colleagues, was one of the people, hiding behind his curtains in his living room as all of this was going on. I know when I came in, even later than you came in, I remember coming in from Cambridge and down by BB&N, suddenly state troopers come out and stop me, and I'm like, what the heck? And they come up and they're looking, and I said, I have a press, here's my press thing, I'm going to BUR. It was like 5 in the morning, maybe 6, 5 in the morning, I think. And they're like this. So I'm like, what? So I get very quiet. And they circle around with these flashlights, and they're looking in the back of my SUV. And I realized they're looking for him.
Right.
And my skin crawls, and they're like, okay, go on. So they were stopping cars, they were looking in the backs of cars. And I come in, and you are already with a very small team. You're just, an engine going there doing the coverage. Just talk a little bit about the tone that morning, and then I want to hear some sound.
Well, I haven't thought about this. I think the tone was one of uncertainty, right? I mean, here we had this horrible event, and days later we're still dealing with it because the bombers are on the loose in our hometown.
We're on lockdown.
It was days of uncertainty and not knowing what was going to happen next, and trying to follow the story as it wound, from Boston through other neighborhoods and the lockdown. And at one point I remember going home and then not knowing whether, because of the lockdown, I was actually going to be able to get back into Boston, which turned out not to be a problem. But it was probably the most chaotic series of days, string of days that I've ever experienced.
Well, let's go to that Friday morning, early in the morning. We have some sound. You're talking to, again, John Peck, who became our reporter on the scene.
Right.
Bruce Gellerman was out in the street. He did incredible reporting during a lot of the shootouts. And then John Peck was behind his curtains. Let's listen.
With one suspect in the Boston Marathon bombings dead and another apparently still on the run this morning, there's a search going on in Watertown right now. WBUR's Jonathan Peck, who lives in Watertown and who has been locked in his home, so to speak. Jonathan, take us back to hours and hours ago, in the wee hours when you were first woken and alerted to what was going on. Tell us what happened in the wee hours this morning.
Yeah, we were woken by what sounded like firecrackers. In fact, we've been woken before by fireworks in this neighborhood. Some of the kids will go kind of jump over the fence across the street and light them off in the field over there. So we're thinking, a couple firecrackers. And then there was a big boom following, the pops.
I just want to play a little bit of the gunshots that were heard in Watertown this morning.
Tough, isn't it?
Real life, not a film.
Yeah, that's tough,
Right.
even to hear now.
Right. I remember thinking when I was talking to Jonathan that a a great guy, by the way, but not a reporter. And I remember saying to myself, Bob, put yourself in Jonathan's head and try and look through his eyes and get him to explain what he saw for the listeners on the other end of the radio. Because I thought it was important for him to explain that, what he was seeing and that sort of
many
thing.
times, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
You have so many interviews, but I'll talk about one that meant a lot to both of us. At about 6 in the morning, the police released the names of the suspects. This was Friday morning. This was the morning after. And I didn't recognize there was a Joker or something like that, but I saw the age was 19
Right.
and Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin. And I knew that my nephew, Zolan, who went to Ringe, knew everybody who was his age, and he was at Northeastern.
Right.
And I called and woke him up and said, go look at the TV. And there was the picture of his childhood friend, Jahar. And he said, yep, it's him. And we put him on the radio.
Right.
You were I'll never forget how kind you were. Let's listen.
WBUR's Robin Young of Here and Now joins us in the studio this morning. Good morning, Robin.
Well, I live in Cambridge, and all morning we've been thinking as we started Googling around and finding the young man of the same name at Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin. A lot of us know children who went to that school, and I believe I have on the line my nephew, who knows this young man very well.
Can I ask you, how long was he in the United States? And did he ever talk about what was his life at home earlier in Russia?
I do not ever remember him talking about that. I can tell you that I remember that, he always talked about going to school in the United States. And then I remember he mentioned once maybe possibly going back after he got his degree, much like any other person that came from a different country would,
Let's be clear, Zoll. I mean, you told me once that at Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin, which you adored, there were 45 languages spoken there. I mean, this was very common in your school.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about one of the more diverse schools in the United States. So, I mean, for the fact that it was even hard for me just to single somebody out just because they were from a different country, because there were so many different people there from different countries.
That it went on. That was just a little taste of this interview. He just would say he couldn't grasp it. I mean, none of us could grasp it.
Right.
But Rolling Stone went and did the follow-up terrific article. This is probably one of the only times where this kind of an event has happened, and people never came forward to say, I knew something was wrong with this kid. This was nobody has ever said that. This is one of the most popular kids. It was stunning. You helped him through. At one point, you were asking him in that same area about Russia. You were saying, was he picked on because he was a Muslim? And Zolan said to you, oh, Bob, you got to get in line behind the Zoroastrians in our school. Yes, so many. But, this had just happened, and you were so even and so careful and kind with him. And I just want to say that young man who was at Northeastern.
Right. Tell us what he's doing now.
He's the White House correspondent for the New York Times. And he talks about you all the time, how he learned so much from you that morning.
He texted me the other day.
Oh.
He texted me the other day. We don't have a big text relationship, but
hey, if you can get a text from him, between his trips with the vice president to Vietnam or whatever he's doing today, good for you.
Yeah.
Because, but
he's a great guy.
Well, but I mean, the point is, you have lit so many fires. We can hear that. He was as calm as he was because you were as professional as you were.
Well, what do you say to that? I remember you and I had chatted about him before he went on the air. So, I was mindful of the fact that he was related to the woman I'm sitting next to here. So don't say anything.
Don't grill him.
Yeah, don't grill him. But the other thing is that you have to be mindful of the circumstances of all the people you interview. The greatest lesson I ever got in terms of how to interview someone came from a journalism teacher I had. Rich and I both had him. His name is Jack Borden, who was a Channel 4 reporter for a really, really long time. Well, we had him for a class in reporting. I don't remember the name of the class, but the enduring lesson that Jack, for me, the enduring lesson that Jack taught was put yourself in the shoes of the person you're interviewing. Don't just be the person who asks the list of questions in front of the person you're interviewing. Put yourself in that person's shoes and listen to what they're saying. You'll get a much better interview, and you'll learn a lot more than if you exhibit some empathy, and that, you know. I'm talking about a lesson that I learned in 1978, 9, and it stuck with me. Excuse me, 74. Thank you for the correction. Correction. You know, if it stuck with me all that time, and it served me well.
Jack Borden recently passed. And
I
he
did
also,
not know that.
Just one of the great reporters of all time. He also came up with the Spacious Skies Initiative, getting people to look up.
Right.
Got the post office to develop a stamp. He was, wow, we're very lucky. We're very lucky in this town. I want to get to some of the questions. I won't be able to get to them all, but here's an interesting one. And you may not have to have time for this, but what books are on your nightstand? What's intriguing you now?
Well, I'm gonna freely admit that when I read, you know, I read so many newspapers or electronic versions of newspapers every day. You know, from everything around here and in New York, and I read the LA Times and I read the Guardian. And
You're giving a break? You're taking a break?
When I'm recreating, I'm reading spy novels.
That's okay.
I just love the intrigue, and or I'm reading popular murder mysteries and that sort of thing. I just want the break.
Call the midwife. That's me. I mean, like, I don't want to see news. I don't want to. What advice do you have? Not even advice, but just thoughts for Rupa.
Well, Rupa and I have talked about this a little bit, and you know, I think I suggested to her that she adopt one of the attitudes that I adopted years ago, and that is to not worry so much about pleasing the people you're working for in the radio station. Remember, this is public radio. We're working for you, and you have to keep the listener in mind at all times. Not just when you're fundraising and asking something of you by saying the 800 number, but also when you're in the minutia of editing a simple news story. That you just have to make sure that each word in each sentence comes out of your mouth in a fashion that's easily understandable to the person on the other end of the radio, because you may read it 20 times before you say it out loud.
Exactly.
They're going to get one shot in a span of a few seconds, and that's it. So you have to keep that person. You have to keep that one person in your mind. And when you screw up, because you're absolutely going to screw up more times than I could possibly count. If I had a nickel for every time I screwed up, you know, I'd own the building. Let it go. Let it go immediately. Because by the time you realized you screwed up, your voice is already out past Mars anyway.
Or as I say to a lot of the young producers that I work with, no one has ever been injured in the making of a radio segment. It's like, nothing's going to happen.
That's right.
Look, I think we're going to have a moment. Bob's going to remain here, when the evening is formally closed. And so if you do want to come up and ask some of the other questions that are here, but in the interest of time, I just want to, point out again what a serious, dedicated journalist you are and how many you've sent from the nest. I'm thinking of Sean Cole, who many of you have heard his essays on This American Life, and he was also your field producer. And in fact, he sent us a little bit of sound again to demonstrate this, just the sobriety and the seriousness that you bring to your role. Let's listen.
This is Bob Oaks. Morning edition. Report from the Middle East. Also, the Gagan case. Tomorrow morning edition. Starts at 5. Howl at the moon.
What is that?
That was news for puppies.
Okay, but seriously, how many people can have a governor kind of, aware of their comings and goings and bring it up in an interview? You were talking to Charlie Baker, and you were trying to get him to say if he was going to run again. This is just shortly after your stepping down from Morning Edition had been announced. Let's listen.
So, Bob, I'm just curious to know if when you got to around the 15-year mark, anybody said to you, gee, Bob, you've been doing this every single morning, 5 days a week for 15 years. Do you really want to keep doing it? And I got a feeling your answer to that was yes. And as a result, we have been blessed to have you for way more than 15 years on our radio every morning in our homes and in our cars.
And I want to note that this was an interview. So Bob said, yeah, thank you. Are you going to run again?
Right.
Bob, I'm going to get all whatever, because it's just been so wonderful to be considered a peer by you, to be treated as a peer by you all these years. Some of our moments. Who can forget when I brought the leaf blower into the Morning Edition cut-in to demonstrate why leaf blowers were being outlawed? Because they were so loud, and spoke over the leaf blower and was immediately pulled off the Morning Edition cut-in by Jane Christo.
It was a classic moment.
It was doing those visits with you in the morning and looking over and gauging whether or not you'd engage with me by whether or not you were asleep during the cut-ins, or the time you were, I'm talking about the show coming up and you're happily eating your Cheerios and you choked on them. It's like,
I did have Cheerios a lot in the morning.
And this is my last time I will get to apologize to Martha for this. During the Valentine's Day fundraiser.
A zillion years ago.
Yes, when I helpfully pointed out that
a zillion years ago.
Instead of what Bob did, which was give his wife a dustbuster.
A zillion years ago. And I still haven't lived it down.
When you work, our devotion, our first and foremost devotion is to the listener and the story, and carrying that story carefully to air. But the second is when you get to work in these conditions, and we heard it from Shannon, where you're working around the clock, and it is so, so important that you have these rich relationships with your colleagues, and I will cherish mine with you. And I know you want to say a few words to the people who are here, but can I ask just one last time, can we do the phone number?
1-800-909-9287. It's so great, you know it.
The floor is yours.
Oh.
The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I should say, Robin, how much you mean to me. You're a dear colleague and an incredible journalist, and it has been a privilege being a part of any news operation that you're a part of as well.
Well, thank you. And I I have this dream of like a sitcom. It's Bob Oakes in semi-retirement, because again, you're still going to be reporting. And it opens on the scene of, you and Martha like pushing back the covers, and there you are to start the day, and then there I am, popping up too. I'm going to miss you so much.
So I want to recognize some of my colleagues. I hope I get everybody. If I don't, I apologize beforehand. Some of you are in the room, but the first person I want to apologize to is my good college friend Rich Merrill, because for somewhere around 30 years, every year between 4 and 8 of us who were buddies in college would get together and we'd play a golf game annually. We all sucked, but it was an opportunity to get together and reminisce year after year after year about the same things, and have a great time. And after every game, Rich used to say, "So, are you reporting the scores tomorrow on your radio station?" And I never did. So I'm sorry about that, Rich.
Well, what a friendship. What a friendship.
And we've been passing around a little trophy to the winner for 30 years. We have a trophy that we've been passing around for 30 years that's specially engraved with Rich Merrill's label maker. Those. So, but Dan Mozzie,
Stand up. Where are you?
Our executive news guru, is back there. Thank you, Dan. The other Dan, Dan Guzman, the longtime producer of Morning Edition, is here. Thank you, Dan, for everything over the years. It would, as I've said to you, it would not have been possible had you not been there on the other side of the glass. Thank you so much. Wilder Fleming is here. For the past several years, Wilder and I have worked on many different political stories. Wilder, you are incredible. Thank you very much. And I look forward to doing a little more work with you, I hope, in this new gig.
Son of Sam.
Sam, right. Oh. Sam Fleming.
Didn't come out right.
Son of Sam. Where are you, Sam? Sam, there you are, back there. Sam Fleming. I told the story about how Sam and I met back in the 1970s. After WEEI went out, meaning it changed from all news to all sports, Sam called me one day and said, why don't I take you to a Red Sox game? So he took me to a Red Sox game, and as we sat in a box, I think, he convinced me to come to work for WBUR. Not for a minute, honest to God, not for a minute did I ever think the job would last more than a year or two. And so
we have Sam.
I think my 2 years are up.
Yeah, we have Mike Steffen's here.
Mike Steffen.
Where's Mike?
Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Mike, our fundraising guru. That guy makes fundraising which it can really be a drag. That guy makes fundraising so much fun, and it really is important. So I'm
because we get to watch him have a complete meltdown over the course of it.
But he makes it so much fun, and he makes it so doable for everyone who sits there and pitches. Mike, thank you very much. You are incredibly talented. And I look forward to the December fundraiser. Margaret Lowe. Margaret, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being. Thank you for your leadership over the past incredibly difficult couple of years. We've survived and are thriving as best we can thanks to you. And thank you for allowing me to escape Morning Edition and move on to the next gig. So thank you. Tiziana Deering is here.
And Tiziana, another rising.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Shannon and Monica, you are my friends for life.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much. So.
Bob Oakes.
Who did I miss? Oh, oh,
Oh,
oh.
oh,
She went like this.
oh,
Martha.
oh, you're right.
So, look. I think we have a picture that we're going to show in a minute. So this will this story will have a little more meaning once you see the picture. In 1975, when I was again a college student, I went cross country with a couple of other college buddies, not rich, and I spent 3 summers on the road. I spent $300 all summer. I had a window van. It was my van. It had speakers all over the place.
Ooh, shag rug.
It had a shag rug. That's right.
Yeah.
Had a bed in the back for sleeping, but most of the time I slept on the roof. And it was. I'm going to say it out loud. I inhaled, and it was my version. It was my personal version of the electric Kool-Aid acid test, without most of that crap. Excuse me. And then in 1976, I was dating her roommate occasionally, and I called her. I called looking for Priscilla, and Martha was rooming with her because I wanted to go to a free play on campus the day after Valentine's Day. Priscilla was not available, but since we were only occasionally dating, I said to Martha, "Hey, why don't we meet there?" So we met there, and after the show, we went into town, and for about 3 hours until closing, the waitress was incredibly pissed at us. We each nursed 1 drink, and we sat and we talked and stared at each other across the table for hours. And that was it. I mean, honestly, I fell in love that night. I fell in love that night. We got married 4 years later. We've been married since 1980. My friends say that I had to wait for an even year because it was the only way I'd remember what date the anniversary was. And after all this time, she's endured my occasionally long absences, getting up in the morning. We raised 3 kids, and one who's now in LA, working for the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in an executive position. I got a kid into the arts. One is in Denver managing a restaurant, and the third one is here living in Central Mass, and she drives heavy equipment.
Yeah.
And she says, "I'm the boy you never had." But you know, a lot of things are not doable without all the help you get when you work in the radio station with all my all our colleagues. We all know that, the way we interact with each other. This was not doable without you, babe. So, thank you.
That is true. That is true. And now, we didn't get the picture, though. I guess they could. What?
That's it. I met her and cut the hair.
Oh, I love that. I think we're prepared for Margaret to close the evening. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That close and that thank you to Martha is what we call in our business a gorgeous ender. Let's stop there. Once again, Robin Young, Bob Oakes, thank you for tonight. Thank you for so much more. What a pair these two are, and how lucky we are. Let's give them another round of applause. I just want to say, Bob Oakes Chris and Robin Young, you are WBUR, and I want to say to everybody here that you are WBUR too, and we would not be here without you. So I think you deserve a round of applause
Yes.
from us.
Yes. Thank you.
I suspect a number of you might want to just come up and say hello to Bob and to Robin. So I'm going to ask them to just put their masks on, and you put your masks on, and anybody that wants to come up and say hello, please do. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all for your enduring support for marvelous, magnificent people like this and for the work we do. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.